Hi, this is David Dickens, and Sunday's Father's Day. So today we want to cover 3 financial planning tips for Father's Day. Going to try to put something in there for every age category of dad that might be listening to this podcast, so hopefully there's something in here just for you. I'll go get Walter, and we'll get started.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Cover Your Assets KC. I'm Walter Storholt alongside David Dickens, President, Wealth Advisor of Creative One Advisors Group, based out of Overland Park, but serving folks all across the country. If you've got any questions, never hesitate to reach out. And it's going to be a good category of topic today as we talk about Father's Day and those financial planning essentials that David has narrowed down for us. And David, great to talk with you, and I hope you've got some fun plans for Father's Day.
Well, I do. I love to grill and smoke meat, so we are going to do some ribs out on the grill, and I'm not sure what I'll add to that, or hopefully Linda will help me with some spicy coleslaw.
Once you have
something.
ribs, there's not much else you need, right?
That's true. Some chips or maybe
life's pretty good at that point. Like if you had to just eat ribs, I mean, we could work with that.
You
right?
could make it. Yeah. You could actually make it if you had to do that every day for the rest of your life.
Yep. Life might be shortened a bit, but it would be a good day every day, I think.
Never know. You go down with a big smile on your face, I'll tell you that.
That's right. That's right.
What about you?
If you eat ribs every day, does it matter if you die at 90 or 88? Not really at that point, right?
I think not.
That'd be an okay trade, maybe.
Yeah.
We are going to go camping, so we're going to have a little camping weekend away for Father's Day weekend. So it's our first camping trip of the week, or of the year, I should say. And we're going to go to a new spot that we've never been to before.
Fun.
Yeah, the Snowy Range in Wyoming will be right nearby there at a local campground, and so we'll kind of do some touring and a little bit of light hiking and just kind of check out a new area. So,
and actually, if we're early June, you actually could get snowed on.
It's possible. Now, I will tell you, we picked a good weekend to get away because it's supposed to be 95 or higher here locally, kind of on the front range of Colorado. So we picked a good weekend to go up to 10,000 feet of elevation. I'm just going to say that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
We'll have a great time.
Should be fun. Well, let's dive into these essentials. David, what's first on the list?
Well, the first is, honestly, all 3 of these are fairly basic, but if you put these things together, I think there are 3 really good areas of attention that if you pay attention to, you're probably going to have a happier financial life and maybe a happier retirement financially as well. So the first one is just create and adhere to a spending budget. So I learned early on, and I've remembered it forever, something Ben Franklin said, and this is certainly a paraphrase, but there are 2 roads that can lead to wealth. One is increase your income. The second is reduce your expenses, but the fastest way is to do both at the same time. And so, if you take that to heart, whether you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s, it will get you to the wealth that probably you want and deserve by taking a look at that. So budgeting isn't really something that a lot of people gravitate to because it's kind of a pain in the neck, and you almost feel like you can kind of feel like you're wearing shackles. And so the point here is to not feel like you're being shackled by some budget that you set up, but to actually know how you're doing. And so the keys here are let's say you're newlywed or young family. You've got a lot of life ahead of you, and you've got a lot of, hopefully you've set out some financial goals in writing. But as a newlywed, well, you might be 2 income, no kids. And so you've got a lot of money sloshing around in your account, hopefully, and not a lot of current responsibilities financially. So perfect time to start saving, and maybe start saving hard, and make sure that you live below your means. All that means to me is 0 credit card debt. You want to have money left over at the end every month, and hopefully you put that into long-term savings to feather your own retirement nest while you still have that chance. Young families, it tends to get a little more expensive, whether you're shelling out a lot of money on diapers or daycare or even kids' sports these days is so expensive. But you just want to make sure in that stage that you are still adhering to a new spending budget, probably an eye-popping increase to your budget, but you just want to make sure that you're still living within your means and that you're not taking on credit card debt and you are still saving for your retirement. Then the third phase is kind of that empty nester phase. And usually those are your power earning years. Your kids are gone. Hopefully they're out of college. Hopefully they're independent. And you are banging away at your career at probably the most money you've ever made in a year. And maybe your spouse is still working. And those are the years where you are really kicking it into gear and maybe, hopefully, maxing out your 401k at work and hopefully got more that you're putting into a brokerage account. And you've made a good decision as to whether you're doing Roth or regular 401k. And then probably what I see the most of is a newly retired couple or individual, doesn't have to be a couple. And oftentimes they need a budget because either they're prone to spending too much, or, and I see this more commonly with my clients, they spend too little. Maybe because they don't yet have the confidence that they need to have because they're not getting a paycheck anymore. They're drawing on, well, they're getting their Social Security, maybe a pension, but probably not. And they're drawing down the retirement savings that they've worked years and years to build up. And it feels a little uncomfortable to start taking out instead of having been putting in all those years. So all of those age groups can benefit from having a spending budget. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to keep receipts, track every penny that comes in and out. Some people do. And if that's your thing, good for you, do it. You probably do it in a spreadsheet or maybe some sort of software. So good for you. But to know whether or not you are living above or below your means, staying away from credit card debt, and saving systematically, it probably means every other week out of your paycheck or monthly. Those are the key things that are going to help get you to where you're trying to go. The goals, the long-term goals you've set up in your 20s and 30s, or if you happen to be a little behind in your 50s and you're empty nested, now's the time when you can kick in a little harder. But if you're spending too much, it's really hard. Well, it means by definition, you don't have enough left over to put into those accounts to save for your own future. So that's number one. Know how much you're spending and make sure it's less than what you're earning, and do a good job of tucking that money away in probably a tax-deferred account so that you have the retirement that you're interested in having.
Yeah, great outlook and great reasons for making sure that we're staying and living within our means and making some good choices there. Especially as a parent, it becomes really, really important to make sure you've got those dials properly tuned. I was thinking about talking to some family members recently, David, and asking about what the kids were going to be doing this summer and what kind of summer camps they'd signed up for and all this stuff. And boy, that was an education just to hear how difficult it was to get the types of camps that you want and then the expense of them. And it's definitely like everywhere you turn, you've got these extra expenses. So having these kind of dollars dialed in a little bit becomes more important.
Yeah, I was laughing with another grandparent, a client of mine. She has a daughter. She has a couple daughters, but one has children, and one of our daughters has children. And we were laughing. It's like, well, if you don't know what they're going to be doing in the summer by January of this year, 6 months in advance, then your options are going to be running really low. So the planning process, not to mention the expense, is really something when you got kids and they're out of school for summer.
No kidding. Well, speaking of planning, what is our second planning essential for Father's Day?
So our second is a topic most people don't like to talk about, but it's having adequate life insurance. And that probably means on you and your spouse, even if your spouse is not working outside the home. But there are certain couples that don't need any at all. And so the important thing to me is that everybody listening to this podcast has taken the opportunity to calculate what your insurable interest is. Do you need life insurance? And if you do, how much? So, Walter, you have, I'll bet we've talked about this topic 3 or 4 times over the years, and you've always put in a link to an insurance calculator, which I like, but you can Google how much insurance do I need, and they'll send you'll get 10 or 15 different calculators. I happen to like bankrate.com. And if you go to bankrate.com/insurance/life-insurance, you'll get to what I think is a really good calculator. Nothing perfect, but I think it's really good.
And yes, we will link to that so people don't have to remember all those backslashes.
That'll be awesome. Thank you. Probably shouldn't have even said that. I should have said, hey,
That's
Walter,
just kind
you
of
put a link
entertaining
to
anyway.
that, right? But what you're really trying to do is, in the unlikely event that one of you dies, you got to have income replacement for things like your mortgage, college for your kids if you have them, retirement savings, inflation, stuff like that. And the key factors you would need to put into your calculator are, for instance, your age, your spouse's age, your kid's age, how much income you make. That's going to say a lot about how much income replacement you need. What assets do you have? And maybe you've done a great job in your 30s and 40s of building up so many assets that you need less insurance. Well, that's a good thing. And then future expenses. Maybe it's college for the kids, or maybe it's, whatever it is that you can think of that you want to make sure you have for the future. And if you're not there, you want to make sure that the people you leave behind have that funded for them. So there are seasons in life where you need a bunch. There are seasons in life where arguably you don't need any. You just need to understand what season you're in. Walter, I did a really quick little calculation. So if you talk to one advisor versus another advisor versus a particular website that you Google, you're going to be hit with choices like, well, do you want term insurance or do you want permanent insurance? And I have always been a big fan of buy term insurance and invest the difference. Keep my insurance and my investments separate. There are perfectly great advisors who will tell you, no, what you really want here is permanent insurance, which builds up a cash value that you can access later in life. That's a decision that you and your advisor can talk through. I ran a quick little quote of what life insurance, term life insurance is so cheap, yet a lot of people don't have nearly enough. And if at your work, a lot of times they say, well, we're going to give you 1 times your salary, and you can buy more if you'd like. That's perfectly fine, except 1 times your salary is, this is not advice for you, but 1 times your salary is way less than what you need. And buying that insurance in a group policy is about the most expensive way to buy term insurance, because they don't know you from Adam. I mean, if you have bad health, then that type of term insurance is probably pretty good. But if you're in really good health, then you want to go get your own policy. So I popped this into an insurance quote engine that I have access to. Again, this is your experience might be different, but I said that this person is 40 years old, they're male, they live in Kansas, and they want a 20-year term policy. In other words, the death benefit stays the same for 20 years. The premium stays the same for 20 years. But after 20 years, it's like your car insurance. When it expires, you don't have anything built up. It's not an investment. It's just pure insurance protection. So, Walter, I'm not going to ask you to guess what the monthly premium on a $2 million policy that stays the same premium for 20 years is going to be. I'm just going to tell you. But
Can I guess?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And how? What's the age again?
This person is 40. They live in Kansas. They're male, and this is a $2 million death benefit.
I'm just gonna say $125 a month.
Oh man, you are a killer. That's really good.
Really?
The lowest was $118 a month. There's 119, 120, 127, 133.
Wow.
But all of these companies come to about the same conclusion. It's not like one of them's going to charge you 120 and another one's going to charge you $215 a month. They're all pretty much in the same ballpark. And I think we would all agree that to protect the things that you have to protect, $118 a month for the next 20 years for $2 million of protection. The reason it's so cheap is because the probability that you're going to die is pretty low. But if you do, it's really important to the people you leave behind that they have a big chunk of money that's going to come to you tax-free, going to come to them tax-free, that they can spend on college, paying down the mortgage, retirement savings, and keeping up with inflation. If you're listening to this podcast and there's somebody in your life that you're pretty sure hasn't taken care of this, or if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't taken care of this, this is something you would want to do this afternoon or tomorrow or the next day, but not 6 months from now. Because if you happen to get hit by that proverbial bus or that UPS truck, well, then it's too late and you've left a bunch of people in a pretty bad spot. And if all you've done is take the insurance that you get as a company benefit and no more, I am confident that you are underinsured. This is not advice for you specifically, but do 10 minutes worth of calculations on this calculator that Walter's putting in the show notes, or some other calculator you find, and then just make sure that you feel really confident that the amount of this incredibly cheap term insurance is enough for the obligations that you have going forward.
That's really helpful, David. By the way, I will pat myself on the back for being so close in that.
That was amazing. I'll tell you, that was amazing.
I didn't go into that with a lot of knowledge. I was kind of doing my own math from when I got a life insurance policy 10 years ago, and for whatever amount it was and what I pay per month for it, and I was just trying to extrapolate from there. So it's good extrapolation, I guess.
Good for you. So
now, I'm curious on something, David.
Yeah.
Whenever we're looking at my wife's plan each year and making our elections for coverages and insurance and health and all that kind of stuff, there's always that section about disability insurance, and I tend to, and I kind of lumped in there always with life insurance, and I tend to kind of go past that because it's kind of like, oh, well, that's not going to happen, and I move on, and I'm like, well, we'll figure out other things that would be fine. I don't know. It's just been one of those things I always kind of breeze past, but now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't be doing that. And where do you usually advise people when it comes to kind of figuring out that piece of the puzzle?
So that is so important, and I'm glad you thought of it. It is listed here on my notes as 2A. So 1 was created at the budget. Second is have life insurance. But 2A is you really need disability insurance, and here's why. You can Google that, and what you'll probably find is some statement that says, what I found, I don't even remember the website, but Google it and you'll find something like this. At age 42, I think this might have been female, but anyway, at age 42, you are 4 to 5 times more likely to become disabled than you are to die. And if you become disabled and can't keep doing your job, well, that can be a dramatic impact on
financially.
Your family's finances.
It's as if you died.
Yeah. And you might have accelerated.
Except you're still supporting yourself.
Exactly, probably with higher medical bills than you ever expected.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
that is a really good company benefit. And if they give you an opportunity to go over and above, I think I've always taken that. And thank goodness, knock on wood, I've never needed it. But I've never needed my life insurance either. And my home's never burned down. And I've almost never had a car accident. So, insurance, you hope it's this kind of thing you pay for and you hope you never need.
It's pretty nice to waste the money in that case.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been happy to waste all that money over the years. But your point is a really good one. Statistically, you're much more likely to become disabled during your working years than you are to die. So disability insurance is, guess that, more expensive. Fine. It's a more likely event. So make sure you check out both. I am going to suggest that you do both and, take this seriously, because once it's happened to you, you can't go back and fix it. So yeah, that's a super important number 2. And hopefully that's enough information to get everybody started. Those are topics that you might want to visit with an insurance agent or an advisor about. So, if we can help you with that, we would love to do that. The cost of doing it yourself, so for instance, on term life insurance, the cost of doing it yourself versus the cost of doing it through an insurance agent or an advisor is basically the same. And so if you want to get some good advice from somebody, go to somebody you trust, maybe get a second opinion, but don't wait 6 months to get that done.
Yeah, it's a great point, and reason to take a closer look, especially if you're going to insure for the one thing and the other thing is more likely. Don't leave it off the table, because that just doesn't make sense. Well, what's our third and final financial planning essential for Father's Day?
Well, the third is that you should do at least some basic estate planning, and this varies by age group and by family structure, of course. But if you're a young dad and you've got some minor children, well, you certainly need to have a document in place that names a guardian for those in case you and your wife are out for dinner and you don't make it home because something happened on the road and you didn't make it. You want to name a guardian because otherwise the state is going to name one for you, and you'd probably like to have done that yourself. There's probably, depending on your financial situation, a good reason to create a revocable trust. And at that point, you would want to see a trusted attorney, get their opinion on the things that should go into that trust were you to die. The reason from a high level is if you die and you have kids that are minors, well, they can't inherit any of those assets because they're minors. And you're going to need a trust and a trustee to help navigate that until your kids become of age. And maybe you've got kids maybe you have teenagers and they have behavioral problems, or maybe they're in some way disabled, and then you really need a trust. And then the empty nester. I'm not going to say that the other three things I'm going to add on here you wouldn't have if you just have minor children, you're in your 30s or 40s, but it's super important if you're an empty nester or retired. You're not going to name a guardian because your kids are gone. You may have a revocable trust, but most of your assets can be passed on to the next generation through beneficiary designations. So you want to make sure your beneficiary designations are up to date. You probably want to have a living will. And all that's going to say is, if I get into trouble and can't speak for myself, here's what I do want you to do with my health, and here's what I don't want you to do. That's pretty much what a living will says. And then you want to have HIPAA authorizations, which allow doctors, nurses, medical professionals to talk to your spouse, your kids, whoever you name as a HIPAA, authorized as a HIPAA representative for you. And then maybe you have powers of attorney for healthcare and for financial. So those are things that this is not the greatest area to be a super duper do-it-yourselfer. To have an estate planning attorney to at least walk you through the basics, I think it's pretty important. But either way, you'd want to have those types of things done. Beneficiary designations, we've talked in the past on the various podcasts, but those are effective for your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, your 401ks, your home, maybe your vacation home if you had one. Your automobiles can have beneficiary designations and should take care of that at the DMV. All of your bank accounts need a transfer on death designation because those aren't going to go anywhere if you and your spouse die in the same car crash. And then your brokerage accounts, your CDs, all those things can be handled with just a little bit of effort on your part by making sure that they have beneficiaries named for them. So, Walter, this could have been 6 things or 8 things or 12 things, financial planning tips for Father's Day. But as I was boiling it down, trying to turn this into a 20-minute conversation instead of an hour-and-a-half podcast, those are the 3 things that came to my mind. That every father, that every adult, but since it's Father Day, I'm going to focus on fathers. Every father ought to take into their own hands to say, okay, I'm going to make sure that on these 3 things, my family and I are good. And so I hope that this has been helpful for 2 or 3 or 10 or 50 or 100 fathers that listen to this. If you have a young father in your life and they're not getting any good advice, well, maybe you send this podcast to them and say, you know what, here's 3 things that I thought would be important to you. And maybe something sticks when they listen to it. Hopefully, it's been helpful for you.
You know, David, I'm going back through our archives over the years. I don't see, and this is hard to believe, but I'm not seeing, at least at first search, a Mother's Day episode. So I feel like we've left the moms out a little bit
moms.
here. So
Well,
maybe next year. Yeah. We can correct that next year. We may have done one, and I'm just not finding it in my search. But
So I have at least one of my 3 daughters that would say, Dad, stop genderizing, which is a term that I didn't even know existed.
it sounds made up.
But she knows. She's a 30-something and super smart and very in tune. So I get it. This could have been the Mother's Day list, but it is kind of weird not to genderize. But when I meet with couples, it is way more common, but not exclusive, but way more common, that the male takes the lead on financial stuff and the female is happy to listen and nod. That's not necessarily a good thing. It's what I see most in my office. So regardless of your gender, hopefully a couple of these things made a lot of sense to you, and you're going to take action tomorrow or the next day.
It's like anything in life, I think. Good advice is good advice, no matter who you are. But there are some things that tend to just catch the eye, perhaps better, by making it more specific to a group. And so I think that does the trick here on Father's Day weekend as we approach that during the release of this episode. So I hope it was helpful, no matter who you are and where you are on the spectrum. But just to equal things out, maybe a Mother's Day episode next year.
We'll work on that.
There you go. I'm sure we've done some general parental episodes to cover our bases over the years. That's for sure. Well, if you have any questions for David and you want to talk more specifically about your financial plan, you can always do that. In fact, it's pretty easy to book a time to meet. You can contact David and schedule that visit by going to creativeoneadvisorsgroup.com. That's also linked in the description of today's show. And you can go through the CPR process, the complete planning review that takes a look at your unique situation and looks at where you need to go into the future to accomplish your retirement and financial planning goals. You can also call 913-317-1414. All that contact information is in the description of today's show, as well as the link to the bank rate insurance calculator. We've got that linked for you as well, so you can find it easily. David, thanks for all the help. Happy Father's Day weekend to you, my friend, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to you and to all of our listeners. I know I'm going to have a great one. Talk to you in 2 weeks.
Creative One Advisors Group has been proudly serving families in the Kansas City metropolitan area since 2003. Over the years, we've evolved to help meet the needs of our clients, becoming KC Financial Advisors in 2010. In November 2021, our advisory business was acquired by Creative One Wealth LLC, C1W, and in January 2025, we officially adopted the name Creative One Advisors Group. Previous episodes were recorded under the branding of KC Financial Advisors, which has since been rebranded as Creative One Advisors Group. Any references to KC Financial Advisors should now be understood as referring to Creative One Advisors Group. Investment advisory services are offered through Creative One Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. Creative One Advisors Group is a DBA of Creative One Wealth. Insurance services are offered through licensed insurance professionals. Investment advisory services are provided in accordance with the fiduciary duty of care and loyalty that includes putting your interest first and disclosing conflicts. Insurance services have a best interest standard, which requires recommendations to be in your best interest. Creative One Wealth is not affiliated with or endorsed by any government agency and does not provide tax, legal, or estate planning advice or services. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No investment strategy can guarantee a profit or protect against loss. Neither asset allocation nor diversification can ensure a profit or guarantee against losses. None of the information contained herein shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit any offer to buy a security or any insurance product. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. The Creative One family of companies includes Creative One Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor, Creative One Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor, and Creative One Marketing LLC. These companies share common ownership. Additional details regarding advisory services are available in our firm's ADV Part 2A and Form CRS.